by dedicating this Gemara shir today, Friday, May 21st, the 9th of Sivan, for the well-being, safety, security, and confidence. Klal Yisrael, particularly in the Holy Land, but will extend our dedication and wishes for Jews across the globe. And so that is that. We've begun. Just one more thing, just for clarification. Yesterday, we booted off a terrorist from our Zoom class who was infiltrating the Baruch Hashem. I'm happy to inform you it was a fine member of our group whose name unfortunately was changed, and we've sorted it out. And we missed Reb Allen, we missed our Kohen, but it's good to have you back. Just to fill you in, we made a seal, we concluded the 4th chapter, and we've begun the 5th chapter. The 5th chapter, a very considerable pivot from talks of muksa and installation to the discussion of animal wardrobes. Okay, not quite. But what an animal is allowed to wear. Why do we care what an animal wears on Shabbos? Does it need to wear a tie or no tie? Well, that's a fair question. But the truth is, we saw yesterday that even in the 10 Commandments, it talks about a responsibility for resting that extends not only to ourselves, but to our children, to staff, and even to livestock. And one would be prohibited to have their livestock carrying a burden outside on Shabbos. And therefore, there are halachic implications as to what an animal may or may not wear. The very short explanation that's given by Rashi is, and elsewhere, is if the item the animal is wearing is to secure it, that is not considered a burden. It's considered part of its accessories that are necessary to secure, protect it. Whereas if it's unnecessary or to help it carry a burden or be overkill, that may very well be considered carrying and prohibited on Shabbos. Alan, lest you think you missed out a lot yesterday, you didn't, and I'll tell you why. Because we started reading a Mishnah, which brought a lot of Hebrew or Aramaic or obscure words that might have worked very well in the era of the Roman Empire, but we don't know those words or those animals. And today we're going to see what those items and things are. And so it's going to be pretty much, we're going to start our conversation pretty much from the beginning. What can an animal wear on Shabbos? Obviously, the animals on their own don't have to observe Shabbos, but if you are a Jewish owner of animals, you do need to keep or be concerned about what your animal is wearing on Shabbos. One last point, yesterday we discussed why we would first talk about our animal's wardrobe and only then a human wardrobe. We gave a series of suggestions. Perhaps it's less obvious, or perhaps in general, humans need to be very conscious of their animals and livestock and pets that are in their care, to the point where here again, another instance where the Torah, the Gemara, will discuss the animals and what they're allowed to go out and before even talking about if there are any restrictions for human beings. Let's share the screen and begin. Wrong screen. Hold on. All right, bear with me a moment. Oh, one last note. My internet is acting up and we're on a hotspot for my phone. So there's a chance that things could become choppy. So I will thank you for your patience up front.
You mean to be in brachos or?
No, good catch. I was feeling sentimental. All right, here we go.
You wanted to show it.
I'm sorry?
I thought maybe you wanted to show us something.
Here we go, let's begin. I'm gonna read this really fast, it's mostly Hebrew. What are the items that an animal is permitted to go out into the public domain, bearing, carrying, wearing on Shabbos? Yotze Hagomel, a camel, may go out into the public domain wearing a halter, is that the word to be used? An afsar, a bit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It is what they put in the mouth.
A camel can go out with a bit. A bit is the thing that goes in the mouth.
It has this, they usually have something behind it there where they pull, I guess, with the
And
rein.
so there's something that attaches to the bit and then wraps around the face, and it keeps the animal constrained, focused, and the like. Naka bechatam. A naka, which we said was a single humped camel, is that what we said?
Yes.
Can go out with a chatam. A chatam. Anyone remember what a chatam is? We're going to see in the Gemara. Alan, this is just so you realize how little you missed. Veluvdikim, another kind of animal, may go out biprumbia, visus bishir, and a horse may go out wearing a chain. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 types of animals, 2 that we know easily, a camel and a horse. The other 2, which are in the family, will be defined by the Gemara. The Mishnah then continues, B'chol bali hashir, animals who typically wear chains, yoitzim b'shir, may go out with the chain, and it's umshachim b'shir, and may be pulled by that chain. And again, one of the questions we asked yesterday, which needs to be discussed, is when, how, and if an animal can be led or pulled by a chain.
Rabbi, maybe it's a silly question, but why would we talk about a horse and a camel when most of the discussions are usually about donkeys, mules?
In the laws of Shabbos, we're going to try to be inclusive or expansive, and particularly because each animal, this is my thoughts, because each animal has its own type of gear, it's particularly necessary for the mission, I think, to go through each of the primary categories. And you're right. Let me ask you a question. Why do you say it's mostly about a donkey?
Well, if you look through the Talmud, you look above Matzia, you look anywhere, the question is how much to load the donkey, how much to help the donkey, how often do we encounter a camel?
I think a donkey was like a, trying to think of what's the good Hamoin Am kind of car? A Honda, a Ford. It was like a donkey was like the accessible car. A camel was probably more like a Lamborghini. And
anyway, I don't think we should get sidetracked. Just curious, that's all.
yeah, so our mission is being specific because we're going through all different kinds of animals. The reason why generally we hear about a donkey is again because I think the donkey was probably the cheapest and most available animal. It was also the animal that carried the heavy burdens. So if you were a porter or a businessman or whatever, more likely you were going to use a donkey. But we certainly read in the Gemara all about horses and camels. Maybe you even remember in Gemara, those that were with us for Gemara by Zara, we talked all about a certain wild, dangerous horse, and if you're allowed to keep such a horse, and if they chopped, severed part of it. Mark, you remember this Gemara?
Yeah, they had the hamstring or something.
Yeah, so the Gemara certainly talks about all different kinds of animals, but you are correct, I would say, in your assessment that there's more reference to donkeys than others. But for the laws of Shabbos, we need to get specific. If you were an animal that, fair?
There's some special donkeys. They talk.
Yeah,
Talking donkeys.
You gotta
Bilam's donkeys.
Yeah,
Bilam's
Bilam.
donkey.
Yeah. But so basically, I guess so a donkey is your average animal. The horse can go faster and the camel can go further.
Right.
Basically.
And a donkey bore more weight, certainly for your local transportation needs. You go
Now we come to the other question: who would be pulling on Shabbos?
So Beryl, I just said that we're going to discuss that going later on. I already avoided that. How, when, and if one could do so. And then the Mishnah adds another detail, which is not really Shabbos related, has to do with purity and impurity, and says that you could sprinkle the animal to purify it while wearing the chain. And you could toggle the animal in the mikveh if you find the mikveh big enough for your camel.
That's funny.
This is for the guys using the river.
So that's our mission. Give me 1 second. Shalom Ber. No, it's not here. Okay. Now let's see the Gemara. The Gemara is now going to give us some dictionary assistance. Now, what we're going to find out is that sometimes the Gemara gives us a definition, and the definition also needs a definition. Because what was prevalent and familiar in the year 300 might not be familiar in 2021. So let's see. My nakab khatam. What is the nakab khatam? The first, actually, the second animal. Amar Rabba Bar Hana explained, Naksa chiverta, a white female camel. Naksa or nakta chivarti. Again, I'm getting the white female camel from the Schneidels. Bismama de parzala, with an iron nose ring. Why would a certain camel need an iron nose ring? Well, Rashi says they're pretty wild and they always run away. See, kasha lishtamer, they're hard to tie down, they're always running away. So you use a zmama parzala, an iron nose ring. Moizil balaz, noikev es choitmai, they would pierce the inside of the nose, umachnisai besoichai v'kumin tevas, and they would insert this ring into the nose. It's like a nose ring, but instead of being an adornment, it was necessary for securing, grounding the animal.
Rabbi,
Yes.
are you allowed to load a donkey on Shabbos? Or a camel?
Ostensibly not.
So why are you talking about this?
We're talking about how you got to make sure your animals are unloaded and ungeared, whatever the right word is. The gear comes down.
Okay, yeah.
So that's that. I mean, if you'll indulge me for a moment, let's see if this is a thing.
We haven't dealt with the pulling of the animal yet.
We're not going to yet. First, we're dealing with the essential gear. Then we'll talk about, as you may know, there's a whole industry of camel racing in Saudi Arabia and other places in that region. And so when we Google a camel with a nose ring, apparently it happens.
Only Chabad of the Ocean can I get an education on camels.
Well, listen, we're studying the Gemara, and look at this. Look at this wonderful camel. It's got a nose ring, and I think if you look, the one in the right upper right corner, I believe this is probably the most reflective of what we're discussing. The other ones look like they're decoration, but there you have a camel.
I'm afraid to ask you, how do we know which is the female?
Probably the same way. We should ask
I'll
the
explain
doctor.
it to you later, Bert.
All right,
Bernie, we can go back to your
All right.
question of what's the real function.
Right.
All right. So there you have it. A nose ring. It seems to me, it seems to me that there was a certain, I don't know if it was a certain breed, but it seems like there was a distinct kind of animal that was known for being very wild. I imagine, like, you have the wild horses, you have the stallions, and so I imagine it was a known phenomenon, and they probably were trained and cultivated for this high energy and wild energy. But on the flip side, they were hard to contain. Next animal, the luvdikin biprumbia. What is a luvdikin and what is a prumbia? Amar Abuna, chamara luba, a Libyan donkey. Bipagi de parzala, with an iron halter. Rashi. Chamra luba. Luba, luv in modern Hebrew is Libya. So this is a Libyan donkey, Rashi. Chamor haba mimedinas luv. This is a donkey that comes from Luv, from Libya. Kumay hakushim, the halubin, the asa v'divrayam. And we find indeed in the Bible occasionally the word luvim could be a reference to a Libyan, their person, in our context, a Libyan animal. What is a pagi? Arzela. Again, French word, ke'en shalanu, pagi, kumai zekana chamor, base pagi, kibsel base roisha, v'lichrayeha. So it sounds like we're talking about, again, I know nothing about how you would how you might tie down a donkey. I hope I don't get in trouble for this. Here. So iron halter apparently, hold on. All right. I am very ignorant about animal management, but apparently this is a halter. Someone's laughing at me for my ignorance. Is that why you're laughing? So apparently this is a halter. It's the thing that goes on the face of an animal. And I suppose if it was all made out of metal, it would be very, very robust. Is that a fair assessment? And so these Libyan donkeys are high energy and they need a special effort in securing them. Yeah, sorry. All right, so that there is our two items in the Mishnah. High energy camels would need an iron ring. Libyan donkeys would also get a metal or an iron halter. Some are thinking that the rabbi's luck is going to run out soon if he keeps on Googling images for the purpose of this class. But we'll do our best. Levi Shadar Zuzi. Lebei Chozai. Levi, a rabbi who we occasionally encounter in the Talmud, gave or sent money to Bei Chozai, must have been either a people or a group of people, maybe a buying collective, I don't know. We'll take a look. Anyways, he sent money to Bei Chozai. It's either a place. Yeah, the people of Chozai to buy a special Libyan donkey. He wanted a good quality donkey, which were high quality, high value. Saru Shadaru Le Sari. Instead of sending him a donkey, they sent him a bunch of barley, good high grade barley. What were they trying to say? Lemeimar, they were saying, Dinigre de Chamra Se'ari. What makes the donkey do so well, what helps the donkey stride, what turns it into a Libyan donkey is the barley it eats and not an inbuilt characteristic. If one provides his donkey with better food, it'll perform as well as a Libyan donkey. Let's see Rashi. Saru Ma'aisav, they gave him back his money with and they put in some barley.
How do we know they gave him back his money?
That's what it says. They said, you know what it takes to go lead a donkey from Libya to Iraq in those days? It could take up to half a year journey.
Send it by FedEx.
VCU who ate, so can you send a donkey by FedEx?
If you pay enough, they'll take anything.
Pay enough, they'll take anything. VCU ate a liknais chamor b'mkami and said, you know what? Instead of making us crazy, just feed your donkey well and it'll perform. This is a very interesting, could we say social commentary? Where sometimes we want something because it has a good name, but in truth, all you need to do is learn the technique and you're in business. Sometimes, however, you actually need to buy the higher quality, higher grade item. Here we go. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda quoted Shmuel as saying, Machlifin. No, hold on. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Machlifin lifnei Rabbi shalzu b'shalzu mahu. Let's read Rabbi Steinsaltz. What's the halacha with an animal? Oh, Shmuel said that our Mishnah was swapped around. Shalzu, Bezu, Mahu. Let's read Rashi. She'elasam, the question was, Naka ba'afsar, v'gamo b'chatam. What happens if you give a donkey a halter? No, if you give a donkey, just forgetting what the words were. If you give a donkey a nose ring and the camel a halter, is it considered the wrong gear? And therefore, it's as if your animal is carrying a burden it is not meant to carry on Shabbos, or not? Shalzu, bazu, mahu. What is the halacha if you mix them up? So the Gemara goes on to elaborate. Naka be'afsar. A wild camel with a measly donkey's halter. Lo tibayelach, you should have no question that it's prohibited. Kivan de la mintrabe, it is not effective to secure the camel. Masayihu, then it's simply a burden. Ki dibayelacha, the only time you have a question would be gamo bechatam mahu. A camel, no, hold on. Oh, okay. A wild, I'm sorry, let me do this again. A wild camel with the bit of a regular donkey, that's no question, because that's not going to work. Kiti boilecha, your question should be gomo bechatamai. What if a boring, plain old camel that is usually okay just with a bit, and now you decided to go with a little overkill and install an iron nose ring? Is that considered carrying or not? Do we say, Kivan desagile ba'afsar, being that a typical donkey only needs a bit? Masayihu, the choice to do overkill and to install this nose ring is considered a burden that may not be carried on Shabbos. Oy dilma, alternatively, nitirusa yatirta loy amrina masayu. Maybe a little upgraded security is not considered a burden. So I think it's an interesting question. Let's ask like this. Is going a little overboard in security ever a problem? Is it ever considered too much? What would you say? Anyone?
Usually not.
I don't understand, Rabbi. If the animal usually didn't have a nose ring, okay, and you want to put in a nose ring on Shabbos.
Well, before Shabbos.
Well, that's the difference. The question is if it's on Shabbos. In other words, there's you have to pierce the skin, make a hole, and put in the nose ring. In other words, if we're talking about an animal that has never been, because it's a mistake, male, female, they made a mistake, whatever. So that's an issue.
My understanding, just to be clear, my understanding is that we're not talking about a mistake. We're talking about the owner chose. Maybe you bought 5 wild white camels and you have 1 regular camel and you bought a 6-pack of nose rings.
Right.
So you decide, on Erev Shabbos or whenever you decided, just put in a nose ring. It's not going to hurt. I mean, it might hurt the camel, I'm sorry, but it's not going to be less secure than a bit. So the owner had his cheshbon, he had his reason why he did it. It's clear to me that it wasn't done on Shabbos, because then we have a whole other series of questions. The whole discussion here is, are we obligated to take off the gear, or would we be obligated to keep the donkey within the Eruv? I'm sorry, the camel within the Eruv.
I have to tell you, Rabbi, I'm enjoying today so much because it's justifying our Chavrusa, where we start with the Hilchot Shabbos and we end up talking about camels and donkeys. Makes me feel better when we go off topic.
No. We always have a lot of donkeys talking about different areas, but we always have donkeys around.
Well, I thought you were going to say, why are we reading about it? No. So I suspect that's the situation. So, Doctor, good question. I don't imagine it would be allowed to be installed on Shabbos. And I don't even believe that we're talking about putting it on Shabbos. I think we're talking about, do you need to remove it? Would it be a problem on Shabbos?
Rabbi, and
Yes.
not to be completely ridiculous, but if most of this we need if somebody has to paskin a shaila.
Mm-hmm.
So couldn't we have to look at this if somebody asks a question, can I touch my car on Shabbos? Can I put a parcel on my car? If they had to paskin, they'd come back to here to look, no?
Possibly. And I do want to clarify. I don't believe here we're talking about a question of muksa or not muksa. Just to be, I know you're kidding, but I just want to be clear. Here there is a distinct issue, which is keeping something that's considered not a clothing, but a burden or redundant on the animal. It's a unique issue that's relevant or relative to animals. So Rebel, you're correct. Many times we say, oh, what's the modern contemporary parallel to a camel or donkey or a horse? And we'd say a car. In this very precise scenario, that might not work because a car, well, actually, I was going to say cars don't drive themselves. But in 2021, that might not even be true either.
You didn't hear about the Audi.
I was going to say, today, I don't know, Tesla, Audi, whatever the self-driving cars, we may have to have the question of, are you allowed to put a suitcase? Can you put a basket in your automatic self-driving car's trunk or not? But anyways, my sense is this Gemara, unlike other elements of the Gemara, is probably less, it's probably evolved less over the 2,000 years or so, or the 1,900 years of the Mishnah than most other elements of Hilchos Shabbos. Because again, we're talking about animals. I think the animals, they may have changed a bit, but they're more or less the same as they were back then. And I have a feeling that, not a feeling, I know we just Googled a donkey's halter, and till this very day, maybe the material is different, but they're still using halters on donkeys and horses with saddles and the like.
The reason that I said that, I had a discussion with a rabbi who was on a beis din with somebody who damaged a cell phone. And he wanted to replace the screen or a new cell phone, and he went back to the ox.
I hope this was a small claims court.
He gets the tanner gets the dead ox, the value of the phone, and he went back to that Mishnah to paskin.
Interesting. So he said, if I have to replace your phone, I get your old phone.
Yeah, one guy said, I'll replace the screen. The other guy said, no, I gave you the phone. So he said, if I replace the screen, I get the value of the phone reduced, the damage. Anyway.
Absolutely. Yes, there's a lot of applicability, and it's the challenge is to find the exact parallel in the modern world. All right, let's see a little more of the Gemara. So here, back to our Gemara. Under a kind of security system that doesn't work is considered a burden. At least that's what the Gemara is saying in this moment. So if you're going to put an insufficient mechanism on a white female camel, that's considered a burden because it's not going to secure the animal. However, overkill, do we look at overkill as overkill, just the desire to do extra security? Or do we look at it as a burden? That's the Gemara's question. I'm sorry, Doctor, go ahead.
Yeah. Did we learn that this nose ring was really for female animals? Didn't it say something about
what we learned is that there's a certain type of camel that apparently was bred for its energy and speed. And it was typically white female donkeys. And so it doesn't have to do with the gender per se. It does.
That's where I'm going. I'm saying that, is it possible that there are implications of this for ornamentation, specifically of females, vis-a-vis wearing jewelry on Shabbat, as carrying jewelry on Shabbat attached to your body at various places and various weights, et cetera, et cetera?
I see why you would think that, and I was originally, when I was exploring this, I originally had the same question. Ultimately, it does not appear that the discussion here has anything to do with adornment. It's really about utility.
Uh-huh.
However, when we Googled camel with a nose ring, we actually saw there is a whole nother issue, which is camels or rings for adornment on animals. And this is particularly in the modern world, where really the use of camels is pretty much a sport, I believe, for the most part, or at least the bulk of the camel breeding has to do with the races that occur in certain parts of the Middle East. I think Saudi Arabia and some of the, and some of the Emirates and the like. And so there, I believe there is a lot of adorning. And so the question that you're essentially asking is a good one. Our discussion here is exclusively about utility, but what if it's a design, it's a decoration? And that's a question that I believe we're going to address, but it's not our discussion in the moment.
Rabbi, I still think we can make it relevant. What about your pet, your dog?
Yes.
Your leash, you know?
Yes, except there are additional factors, additional requirements that a person has towards their pet that may, because I don't think a dog ever formally carries a burden. So
Don't say that. I've seen people, the dog carries their package for them. They carry the newspaper for them.
okay, you know what? You're right. So we do need to.
No, it's not all poodles. There are a few Saint Bernards around.
Uh,
And
Very.
the last
He
dog.
carries the keg of beer.
So I suppose we would extend a similar question if a dog, if there was a certain kind of harness. Well, actually, let's leave it here, because I think as the Gemara unfolds, we'll find additional parallels, and the question certainly would apply. Are there certain gear or things that an animal should not wear on Shabbos, or should not wear into a public domain? Actually, a very fair point, and let's keep that in our mind as we continue, because you're right, we don't interact all that much, most of us anyways, with camels or donkeys or horses or cows for that matter. But we do certainly interact with dogs, directly or indirectly, unless you're and I've told this many times, I'm not going to repeat it, but unless you're the Jewish cowboy, who I had the privilege of knowing someone as they evolved from a city boy caterer to a cowboy, and now he's very well versed in all this kind of stuff. So anyways, back to our Gemara. The Gemara has a question. The wrong system, is it considered a burden or just an upgrade? We said if the system works less effectively, that's a burden. It's not on the animal to keep them restrained. Therefore, the animal should not have it on them. But what if it's like an upgrade? For example, as we said, the more wild, energetic animal that would have to need a iron nose ring, if that was applied to a more docile animal. Then that's our question. By the way, to the Gemara, it's evident. I don't know why there's. Here's what I know. In different species, there are distinctions between the male and female part of the species. Rebel, maybe the doctor was even going to mention some of these differences, but there are distinctions. And many of those distinctions are biological in appearance, but I think some of them have to do with different behaviors. I think to generalize, many species, the males tend to be more wild, less restrained, and have more physical strength. But not in every species. I don't know enough about camels to have known before this Gemara if there is such a distinction. But certainly there is a species that the Gemara is aware of, or presenting to us that there was a distinction, where the female part of the species had a higher energy and was harder to tame and to contain than the male counterpart. Again, I think for the most part, I think we would say it's the males. For example, in horses, I think the males are wilder, and maybe in the chimpanzees and maybe humans as well. I think the males are a little less in control. Generally speaking, of course, every human is a distinct, person with distinct personality. But if we can generalize,
I'm not an expert, but anybody who knows horse racing, there's a big distinction between the male and the females in horse racing.
What's the distinction again? I'm clueless here, so I'm
No,
willing to
no,
learn.
there's a preponderance of I don't know. I'm not, thank God I'm not an expert. There's a preponderance of one sex. It's very rare for the other sex to
So
be
are
a
they
race.
female? Aren't they female? Aren't the race horses female? Or are they male?
I don't know, but the
They're both.
preponderance
They're
is one
both.
sex.
Okay. All right. Again, I know very little here. So, doctor, you're going to say something?
Yeah. I mean, just apropos to the upcoming Olympics and other athletic events, what you mentioned is a focus on whether or not the male-female issue in terms of transgender athletes,
Right.
whether or not they should be allowed to compete as, let's say, males that they were born male and now they are female, and that inherently and innately, from a hormonal point of view and other points of view, it's not a fair playing field. So there's a lot of legal stuff going on now and has been going on within the collegiate high level communities in track and other things. So it's
So you're
just
saying these are questions that are being asked
yeah.
in the present. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyways, again, I learned something new here, but now that's the question: is overkill, or is overkill just extra security or not? So to resolve that question, Amar Lefanav Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi. Now you might recall Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi were contemporaries, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi had this question, and Rabbi Yishmael just recently found out. He didn't really find out, but it was known. Remember, this is where we talked about how they had a very good, respectful relationship. He said, Kach Amar Abba. This is how my father related this discussion. He said like this, Arba behemois yoitzois be'afsar. There are 4 kinds of animals that it would be acceptable for them to wear a bit on Shabbos. And they are Hasus, a horse, Hapered, a mule, Hagomel, a donkey, a camel, V'hachamor, and a donkey. So why was he saying 4? Usually when you give a number, it's to exclude something that's not part of the 4. So I think this is the statement of Rabbi Yishmael analyzing his father's comment. Maybe it's the Gemara's comment. What is he excluding? Lav lemauti gamol bechata. Aren't we saying that a camel cannot wear a nose ring? In other words, aren't we saying that a camel cannot have an upgraded security system, if you will? And if it did, that would be considered carrying. Can we infer from here that if you swap if you put an iron ring on the male, more docile camel, that's considered carrying? And the Gemara says, no, loy. What we're really excluding is the white, wild, female donkey from having a bit. So for a moment, this looked like a challenge. I'm sorry, for a moment, it looked like it resolved our question. But ultimately, the Gemara says at this point, this might just be more of the same. Again, a diminished securing device is not acceptable on the female white donkey. Let's read Rashi. There are 4 animals that can use a bit, and therefore they're not allowed to have a chatam, they're not allowed to have this extra ring. The Gemara says no. Being that the bit doesn't work on the female donkey, it's considered a burden. A little extra security could go in chatam legamal to give the male docile donkey an iron ring. So our Gemara is left with a question. The question being, if you decide to put on a male camel the extra security system, is it considered overkill?
Back to Bernie's point. I imagine if they had pierced nose or wherever the ring goes would be a factor. No.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
If the style is to wear a ring, it's possible that they pierce the nose the way people pierce their ears to have earrings, so you don't have to worry about the piercing part.
Right. I don't know, but I guess so. Now I just Googled here. Um, Google is not immediately aware of the distinction between the male and female camels as far as their energy levels. Give me, I'm sorry, I need 30 seconds. Oh.
Bernie,
Yeah.
Schuster,
Yes.
you said when you came in from Florida,
Yeah.
you didn't have to stay in a hotel. What excuse did you give?
What happened was I saw an article that said that 25,000 people were excluded by applying and giving a reason. I went online in Florida and I said, I checked off medical. They gave me a number of a file, and then to show that at the airport, the first guy, the customs guy, didn't accept it. But I'll call you later. I'll tell you the details.
Okay, all right.
Beg your pardon. All right, so here we go. B'masnisa Tana. We're now going to see a brisa that also takes on the subject of donkey and camel. Give me a word. I'm sorry. Anyone here? What's the word? What do you call? What's the general genre of the stuff that a donkey or a camel wear to secure it? There's got to be a proper word. Anyone?
This is, I guess, that's probably.
What's the
It's a
term?
bit. It's a bit. Isn't
No,
it?
there's a bit and there's a halter. What do we talk about this? What do you call the general genre of animals securing wear? All right,
Also
gear.
Maybe it's a harness.
Paraphernalia.
Animal harnessing gear.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a brisa that talks about animal harnessing gear. Paraphernalia.
They just call it a harness.
But are they all harnesses or are they like, okay, the animal harness?
I guess.
So there's a brisa on the subject. Really, we should take a class field trip and go to, I don't know, a zoo or to some, and examine the camels and the donkeys, but we'll suffice with this. Okay, Masnisa Tana, a brisa on
Saudi Arabia. There's a Chabad there, no? In Saudi Arabia.
not in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, in
Dubai, yes.
Dubai. In Dubai. I'm sorry.
But I think we could see camels in Dubai too.
You're safer in Dubai than Lud.
Never, yeah.
You can see camels in there. It's also.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Of course.
Luv Dikin, the Libyan donkeys, right? Luv Dikin means the Libyan specialty donkeys, the Gamal and a camel. Yoitzin, the Afsar, they can be harnessed, and part of their harness would entail a bit. Meaning, that they are secured by a bit. What did our Mishnah tell us about a luvdiki? How do you secure your luvdiki? Biprumbia. A prumbia. And what did we say a prumbia was? We said it was an iron halter. It was the iron harness. Now, so a brisa says that a Libyan donkey can be secured with a bit. But our Mishnah said that he should use an iron mechanism. Rashi says, the luvdiki nami mintrabe. From here we can see that these donkeys can also use alternate harness device. Is this a contradiction with our Mishnah? So Kitanoi, the Gemara says this teaching is parallel to another known debate. What is that debate? Ein Chaya, Mishnah says as follows, and Brisa says as follows. Ein Chaya Yoitza B'Sugar. an undomesticated animal should not go out on Shabbos wearing a collar. So, Beryl, you were the one that mentioned dogs, pets, and other kinds of animals. So there's a question of, can a chaya, which is a wild kosher animal, cannot wear a sugar, a collar? Chananya says, sugar, even a wild animal may wear a collar or any other kind of securing device.
Yeah, we're talking actually not kosher. These are all non-kosher animals.
No, these are kosher animals. No, until now we're talking about non-kosher animals. Here, I believe we are talking about a kosher, but non-domesticated animal. So I think like a deer would be considered a chaya, right? The deer is kosher. What other kinds of animals?
Stephen Barenborn. Stephen.
I guess a giraffe is wild. And
Yeah.
domestic, kosher.
Bison.
Bison, yeah.
So I'm not, I don't know, here my ignorance is going to show again. These kind of wild animals, when would you ever find yourself putting a collar on them? Give me a second. Oh, let's see the Gemara. I'm sorry, the Gemara continues. Can you give us some more details? What's going on over here? And based on Rashi's interpretation, these are not exclusively kosher animals. So I stand corrected. But Mayaskinan, what are we talking about? We're talking about some massive animal. Rashi says, Kigoin, dove. What's a dove? A bear. We're talking about some massive animal like a bear. Misagi la sugar. Would you feel comfortable having your bear exclusively secured with a collar? You're going to want to have something a lot more extensive if you're going to think that bear is going to be under your control. Again, I'm not here advocating capturing bears or not capturing bears, but if you do have a bear in captivity in your zoo or whatever else you're going to do with your bear, you better make sure you secure it well or you're going to have some trouble. So what are we talking about? Ela b'chaya ktana. We must be talking about a small animal. We're talking about little rodent kind of creatures. Well, a hamster, a mouse, a rat, a rabbit. Also not necessarily advocating for or against ownership.
Collar on a mouse.
Can you put a collar on a mouse?
I have never seen it done.
Mila sagi la sugar.
Yeah. What about a tiger?
Mila sagi la sugar. What would be wrong with a collar? Would you ever suppose that it should not have a collar? Why would anyone be opposed to a small animal having a collar? Probably we're talking about a cat. Again, Beryl, we're getting closer to home. Beryl, a cat.
Yeah.
We're probably talking about a cat. The question is, what about a cat wearing a collar? Rashi, loy bay nitirusa. Cats don't even need a collar. Cats are less inclined to escape, says Rashi. I never owned a cat. I'm sure someone here has. I don't know if all cats are not likely to escape. But it seems like Rashi is saying that you can be more confident in your cat staying home than your other kinds of pets. If you're going to have a bear, you better tie it down very well, or it's not staying.
The difference between a cat and a bear, you figure.
There may be a slight distinction. So, Ikabin, Tana Kama Savar, the first opinion here, who says, what did it say? Ein Chayetzabisu, you're not allowed to have a collar. Why does he say not allowed to have a collar? Kivan the Sagile b'misna ba'alma masoyu. Because a cat would only need the slightest of ropes to remind it of where its home is. Therefore, a collar is considered too much. and a burden. Hananya says no. Any upgrade in the security of your pet is not considered a burden. It's reasonable enough.
It's very interesting because a cat or a dog would carry a metal tag with the name of the owner and all that. Wow.
That's another question that we're going to see soon.
Huh.
Can a cat or dog wear identifying information? But now we're talking just about the restraint, the collar of the animal. And so what opinion says, you're never allowed to upgrade your animal's secure system beyond the common practice. Hananya says no. Hananya says you can always upgrade, and that's okay on Shabbos. It's not considered carrying. Amar Rav Huna bar Chiya, Amar Shmuel, and Rav Huna quotes Shmuel as saying, halacha kechananya. The halacha is you're allowed to upgrade. So if your dog typically wears a regular collar and you want to put it on a bulldog type of collar, is there such a thing? I think there's the portrayal of a more robust kind of metal collar. It's not considered a masoi, it's not considered a burden on Shabbos. And now let's just go back for a moment. I know we're almost at the end of our session here. Our question was, what happens if you upgrade your regular your regular camel to the robust iron ring for the wild female white donkeys? Someone is listening in and thinking, wow, the rabbi is checking all the boxes, sexist and racist. And no, I'm just quoting the Gemara. So we had that question, and we quoted a debate in the Brisa about if an animal, a chaya, a wild animal, is allowed to wear a collar, and we interpreted it as such. We interpreted the question to be, can you upgrade your security system? And we said, yeah, the question that you're asking is a Mishnaic question. One opinion says, the Tana Kama, the first opinion here, says no, you cannot put an animal on a more robust securing collar than industry practice. And Hananya says you're allowed to upgrade, and any upgrade is not considered overdone. So according to Hananya, can you put an iron ring on a docile male camel? Yes. According to the Tana Kama, the answer would be no. How do we paskin? So Rav Huna tells us that Shmuel says we follow the more lenient position, meaning you're allowed to upgrade your security. Is this the end of the conversation? No, because there's going to be, if I'm not mistaken, a debate in what Shmuel actually said, and that's going to be next Sunday, the Ezer Hashem's Help Sunday. We will have that discussion. So here is the long story short. Today we were introduced to the fact that different animals had different securing mechanisms and techniques. Donkeys, Libyan donkeys get a metal halter. Many other animals suffice with a bit. Wild female camels need a nose ring. And the Gemara then went on to discuss, can you downgrade? Can you put a more minimalistic, less securing device? And the answer as of now certainly seems that would be a problem, because if it doesn't do the trick, it's just carrying around this unnecessary gear on Shabbos, and that's considering carrying on Shabbos. Can you upgrade? Good question. It appears that we have a machloikes, a debate between sages of the Mishnaic era. The nameless Tana Kama, the anonymous first opinion, says you cannot upgrade, but Hananya says you may. How do the rabbis of the Mishnah paskin? Well, we've just quoted Shmuel as saying we follow Hananya, you're allowed to upgrade the security of your animal. That's where we are at this moment.
So Rabbi, you have ranches in Israel. Would you be
Yes.
obligated to take the saddle off the horses on Shabbos?
We haven't gotten to that point yet. So question number one that you're asking is a saddle a problem? Which we'll see. Question number two, is the ranch the problem, or only when it goes outside of the ranch? So we are nowhere near done this conversation. It's a very good question, and I'm going to use it to find out the answer to those questions and so much more about how to handle your animals on Shabbos. Please join us Sunday and then Monday and Tuesday at 10 a.m.
Maybe you could get the ASPCA to be the sponsor.
What is that ASPCA is?
The
Society
Society for
of-
Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. They should be a sponsor of the
Well,
lecture.
I don't know if they would want to sponsor our lecture or perhaps advocates of cruelty to animals, but whatever the case is, someone in that space should
On
certainly.
a lighter side, Rabbi,
Yes.
I checked for sponsor. I checked shopkin.com under animals, and it said that all male camels need a collar.
Oh, every male. All right. That sounds like a good name for a classified section for
I have a
All right.
question.
Yes, Rabbi Allen, Craig Gadol. Yes.
Can you, if you want to walk with your donkey on Shabbos and he's already harnessed, can you walk in front of him and let him follow you?
That's a good question.
Because
Something
what
else-
happens, if the donkey stops? You know, donkeys are stubborn. And then you have to pull him.
So you're asking, are you allowed to lead a donkey? So I will just tell you what I told Reb Beryl, which is that the Gemara is going to discuss the latter half of our Mishnah, which is, can you direct the animal with its how do you call it?
Leash.
Leash or
Halter.
not? And that's the halter, and that's going to be a discussion, God willing, in the coming week, based on
Not
the rest
only
of
that,
them.
Alan, you can't smash him till after Shabbos. You let him sit there.
Generally speaking, we are meant to give our animals a vacation on Shabbos.
That's right.
And that's first presented to us in a very authoritative text of the Ten Commandments. And so this is all about how we could best fulfill that part of the Ten Commandments. I will acknowledge that probably in the scheme of things, this is one of the less immediately personally relatable segments of the Gemara. However, that being the case, first of all, you never know. Second of all, you might have a cat. And third of all, this is part of the Torah discussion. And so, stay tuned. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Shalom, are you here?
Good Shabbos.
Folks,
Good
I'm not
Shabbos.
certain about today's Chumash. You can come on, but I don't see Shalom here, so I don't know if we're going to do it or not.
So we can stay for another half hour.
You could sit around for another half an hour. I'm going to actually end this link and you'll rejoin. And I'm sorry. I don't.
Have somebody coming.
Take
Shkoyach,
care.
good
Be
Shabbos,
well.
everybody.
Have a good Shabbos, everyone. Have a
Long
peaceful-
Sedra, you better go study.
Oh yeah. Take care.